Hey guys, welcome to our presentation on crowdfunding. My name is Matt.
I'm John.
I'm Garrett.
I'm Mike.
Crowdfunding is just a way for small companies to kind of finance and get capital. So here we go.
So we'll start off with a general overview of crowdfunding. Crowdfunding by definition is the practice of funding a project or venture by raising many small amounts of money from a large number of people, typically via the internet. So basically what crowdfunding is when entrepreneurs receive investments or donations from the general public through online platforms such as social media or websites so that these entrepreneurs can start up a project or business venture. And these projects that entrepreneurs decide to set up can have various purposes or goals. For example, projects may be set up to help the community where entrepreneurs and investors receive no financial gain. Or in some cases, projects may be set up for the sole purpose of obtaining monetary gain. Ultimately, there are three different types of crowdfunding that Matt will discuss next.
Okay, so there are three main types of crowdfunding. The first one is equity, and try to think of it in a similar nature to stock, where entrepreneurs try to raise their capital by offering ownership of their business or the idea in hopes that investors will invest in their idea or their business. Investors can profit off this through dividends or maybe an increase in value of the business. And if the business, increase in value, you can sell it at a higher price. So it's similar in nature to stock. The next type is debt, where the investors will give the entrepreneurs or the charity, funds, and they're promised, fixed payments or maybe a claim or a discount on a good. So that it's similar in nature to bonds. And the last one is donation, where people simply invest because they believe in the cause and it appealed to them morally or in some way. Rewards can be offered, such as like acknowledgments, maybe tickets or a news update, or maybe a free gift like a T-shirt or something of that. But there's really no guarantee, and especially with donation, you see a lot of these on social media where people are asking to raise funds for maybe a trip they're going on, or some kind of medical emergency or something, or there's a fire. So donations are definitely the ones that you see a lot on the internet. Next, Garrett's going to talk about the different types of sites that are available for crowdfunding and how they work.
Crowdfunding can be a very important aspect for startup companies. Many people who cannot obtain enough money to fund their project often turn to crowdfunding in order to get money from investors. However, this often goes both ways. Most investors donate some of their money to the startup companies in order to gain some sort of return on investment. If the company becomes successful, investors can often receive a dividend or possibly a small portion of the company. However, not all crowdfunding sources guarantee returns. People often invest for a good cause, whether it be something large or small. People often ask for donations in order to pay for costs such as medical expenses, vet bills, and college textbooks. But some people also abuse the purpose of the sites by asking for money for ridiculous reasons, such as vacations or new clothes. People have the ability to give small donations or large amounts. There is also a large limit to how much can be invested. There are several different organizations that are commonly used for crowdfunding. The most common at this point in time is GoFundMe, which is often seen as you scroll through Facebook. But other sites exist such as 1000 Angels, Kickstarter, and Indiegogo. All of these vary in limits and fees, so one is often more beneficial than any other given certain scenarios.
So crowdfunding has a lot of different benefits. It's a great way for entrepreneurs, charities, and people with small ideas that need capital. It's a great way for them to raise funds. But there also are a lot of cons from crowdfunding. So some of the pros would be, it's an additional way to raise capital. You don't have to go to a bank or some kind of financial intermediary or something like that. Another pro for the investors, you can invest in morally just ideas. So something that you really believe in, something you believe that can take off, and you kind of feel good about that. Um, another benefit is that your donation can be in any amount really. You can donate a small amount, like such as $1 or $10, 20. So it's really up to you, and there's no, there's not going to be some huge fees or something like that. Um, a pro for the entrepreneur or the charity, it's really a cheap way to raise money. It's not that expensive. All you have to do is, go on one of those websites and set up an account and start sharing it across social media. And there you go. People can share it with their friends, send it to other coworkers or something. So really, anybody, you're getting exposure to a lot of people that typically you wouldn't see in, another type of funding. So speaking about the cons, though, especially for the investor, there's no guaranteed returns. So there's no guarantee that the person will pay you a dividend, or that the company will do well, their idea will actually be successful. And a lot of the times, this is the case where uh, companies, they raise some funds, but in the end, they weren't able to make a profit, and they can't pay back their investors. Um, Also, a big thing is that there's a limited amount of regulation. So, what that means is some people take advantage of crowdfunding, and they could use the money that they receive in other ways, in ways that they didn't say, or it's essentially fraud, where they can take the money, and instead of putting it to this charity, they might use it for a vacation or something like that. So that's definitely a big con. And finally, it's crowdfunding is not always successful. Um, it takes a lot of people to raise a certain amount of money, because donations or investments are going to be on like the small side, like $10, $20. So it takes a lot of people, and if your idea doesn't really take off, you're not going to be very successful, and you're not going to be able to raise sufficient funds for your idea.
All right, now we're going to go into civic engagement. We're going to talk about the different positive and negative effects that crowdfunding has on the economy and in different social situations. So let's get started with the positive social effects. So we're going to talk about two major topics under this category, economic impact and donation platform. So the first topic we're talking about is economic impact. We'll start off with the first point. It supports economic growth. The main reason it supports economic growth is due to the funding opportunity it presents to a plethora of entrepreneurs and businesses that cannot take the risk of borrowing at such an expensive cost. The projection with crowdfunding, there's a projection of pumping $300 billion into the economy if Americans move a mere 1% into crowdfunding in regards to investments. The low cost to access liquidity encourages investing. That's the second major point under this. Since people do not have to incur costs to borrow, those funds saved can now contribute directly investing in businesses. Companies also not get a product out onto the market to test due to the cost being too high if the product fails. So crowdfunding mitigates that risk and opens the market for new products to be introduced. And again, that's because more cash into the product, less risks, no obligation to pay anyone back. Second aspect of this slide, donation platform. It's an efficient way to match donors with charities for a good cause. The most notorious use of crowdfunding is donations. I think the first thing people think of when they hear of crowdfunding is donating. There are thousands of causes that utilize crowdfunding sites in order to raise money, and they're for various causes. We'll go into different examples later on, and exposes more people to creating awareness about important issues. So news channels have been reporting crowdfunding frequently, and this leads to awareness about social issues, and it gives people direct access to contribute in a certain way. But we're going to get into the negatives next. So negative societal effects. So the first major thing in regard to business is a lack of regulation. Leads to limited responsibility of those using funds. Since crowdfunding is an innovative way to raise capital, it veers from the traditional ways and legal bindings. It's difficult for government to create regulation that's tailored to crowdfunding. The most prevalent regulation for it right now is the Jobs Act that was created under the Obama administration.
and it has some limitations in regard to how much you could raise in regards to equity and how to report it. But it can lead to market inefficiencies, which is the next point, because typically there needs to be an appropriate balance between benefits of borrowing and the cost of borrowing, and regulation will usually ensure that. But because there is no such balance to give clear transparency or liability to those who are lending, the borrowing, or in this case, the capital requester, it creates an issue. Certain standards are created to limit the amount of people that can invest in a company through crowdfunding, as mentioned earlier, and we're going to trustworthiness. So investors or donors can be taken advantage of. There's very little verification on who is actually trying to raise the capital for these equity reasons or charitable reasons, more so for the charitable because people don't have an obligation to be related to these people in any such way. And there's no guarantee that your contribution will be put forth to what is presented. Several stories where people raised money, didn't know what happened to it. It was given for unethical things. More so donations, numerous known charities that have to report statistics on how the donations are allocated, but not in this case, which creates a problem.
Here we will provide a few advantages and disadvantages that happen because of crowdfunding. One great organization we discovered was Gunner's Wheels. Jason Parker owned a black lab seen in the top right of this slide. Unfortunately, his dog was hit by a truck and therefore paralyzed on his back legs. There were copious amounts of vet bills that racked up, and eventually he couldn't afford to pay them anymore. This is when he purchased a wheelchair for his dog so he could still be mobile. Jason ended up making another and another until he eventually decided it was a good idea to provide for the rest of the nation. Through his GoFundMe, he has raised over $70,000 to purchase carts for dogs, cats, goats, and other large and small animals. Through the generosity of the outside world, he has currently lent out more than 130 carts. Once the carts have finished their use, they are shipped back to Jason and then sent to the next animal in need. Even though this does not provide any returns or dividends, people truly care because the funds are going to such a great reason. People are happy and feel good when they invest in these sources. They are able to be morally connected to this cause, which in turn provides an outlet for investors. Another story we found happened very recently. A woman found herself with no gas while driving through a bad part of Philadelphia. She planned on walking to get gas herself, but a homeless man stepped in to help. He personally went to go get gas for her and brought it back, all while using the last of the money he had. The woman set up a GoFundMe in order to pay back the homeless man. She set up a $10,000 goal in order to get the man back on his feet, but this GoFundMe just recently exploded to over $350,000. Again, people feel morally connected and feel as though they had done the right thing.
Here's an interesting example of how crowdfunding can help give back to the community. Zach Brown from Ohio started up a crowdfunding project in 2014 where he asked for funds from investors so that he can make his first ever potato salad. Brown had no intention for this project to turn such a huge investment. Brown's original goal was just to raise $10, but after 1 week, Brown raised $11,000. Donations came from 7,000 people, and half of these people gave less than $3, and 860 gave $35 or more. Brown decided that he would give back to the community by donating a significant portion of the $55,000 that he received to an endowment fund at a nonprofit to support hunger and homeless efforts.
All right, so just some final thoughts. Overall, crowdfunding is really a valuable resource that many businesses and charities can really use to benefit themselves. They're easily set up and can be shared across all over social media. Investors have to be careful because they may never receive any good or dividend or interest back, so they have to be careful. And despite the many success stories, there are a lot of failures. So you really have to be careful when starting it up, starting one yourself or investing in one. But overall, it has a positive effect on society and it brings everybody together. Thank you for listening in, and